Who really changes someone's fate in just a single afternoon? Or maybe the real question is this: when someone is being forced to become a victim right in front of everyone, who actually has the courage to help? That day, right in the middle of the crowd, everyone was holding their breath. Whispers echoed in every corner of the town. Everyone was asking the same thing: is no one really going to stop this? A young girl with trembling hands, Emily Bauer, was standing alone on a wooden platform under the cold, unkind stares of the townspeople. Her dress was old and worn out. Her shoes hadn't seen a proper repair in years. Her eyes searched the crowd, full of hope but also fear, looking for a familiar face, someone to reach out to her. But nobody in the crowd met her gaze. Some kids played on the stones while their mothers quickly grabbed them by the arm and pulled them away. The men stayed silent. The women prayed. The air was thick with tension, like a melody of tragedy echoing in the quiet. And the reason was simple. Emily's step-uncle had lost all his savings in a single night of gambling. When he got so desperate that he couldn't pay back his debt, he made a deal with the ruthless man at the head of the table. The debt would be wiped away, but in return, Emily's future would be given away. No one wanted to agree to something like that, but money had more power than the town's justice. The most feared man in town, Erik Stein, stood in front of the platform, arms crossed over his chest. Grinning with his golden teeth, he stared everyone down, looking at Emily like she was a piece of property. Even the sheriff was scared of Erik, just going through the motions of his job. While the platform was surrounded by silent onlookers, Emily's hope was almost gone. Right at that moment, an unexpected voice broke the silence. At the back of the crowd, a man everyone in town disliked and everyone told stories about started walking toward the platform. No one wanted to say his name out loud, but as he moved, a path opened up for him. His name was David Brandt. His back was hunched, his face was tough, and his eyes were cold as ice. Everyone had a story about him. Some said they saw him knock out 3 guys in a fight. Others said he was once the best farmer in town. But then everything changed. David quietly walked up to the platform. Erik looked at him with disdain. "What are you doing here, Brandt?" "The girl's debt is my business, not yours," he said. But David spoke without taking his eyes off Emily. "This debt is paid." Everyone went silent. Even the sheriff was stunned. When David slowly pulled a pouch from his pocket and dropped it in the middle of the crowd, the sound of coins hitting the ground echoed through the air. The gold inside sparkled in the sunlight. As the sheriff started counting the coins with his hands, Erik's face turned bright red. This wasn't how things were supposed to end. But Erik wasn't the kind of man to give up so easily. "Nothing's ever that easy, Brandt," he grumbled. "I want what's mine, and nobody can stand in my way." At that moment, Emily stepped back from the platform. She wanted to say so many things, to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. Because she'd been taught one thing all these years: if you stay quiet, you survive. But right then, a new fire lit inside her. There was something familiar in David's face that she'd never noticed before. It was like a secret she'd kept locked away for years suddenly came alive in her hands. And in that moment, everyone felt that the secrets the town had kept buried for years were about to be revealed on that dusty platform. The silence in the town square was broken by the sound of coins hitting the stone ground. While the sheriff was still counting the gold with a stunned look on his face, Erik Stein's expression shifted between rage and humiliation. He was used to always getting what he wanted here. No one had ever stood up to him before. No power had ever challenged his word. But David Brandt was now standing right in front of him, quiet and determined, almost like a ghost. The townspeople held their breath, everyone wondering how things would play out. For the first time in her life, Emily felt a strange sense of hope, right alongside her fear. That man David Brandt was a stranger to her. But deep inside, something told her this man was more real, more genuine than anyone she'd ever met. In that moment, she felt more alive than she had in years. Erik took a step toward David, furious. "Your gold doesn't mean anything to anyone." "This girl is mine," he shouted, his voice echoing through the square. David replied calmly, "Your right was to collect your debt. The debt is paid. You're done here, Stein." Right then, Erik's fingers slid toward his gun. The crowd tensed up. Old women started praying faster. Kids hid behind their mothers. Even the sheriff, who didn't want to fight, knew all too well that the real boss in town wasn't Erik, it was gold and power. But no one expected David to take another step forward. "Emily is leaving here with me," he said, his voice ringing clear as a bell. "Today, everyone will see that no amount of money or debt is enough to buy or sell a person." Erik's eyes darkened, filled with hate. Just as he was about to spit out another threat, Emily suddenly stepped forward. "I'll go with him." Everyone turned to her. Even with fear in her eyes, Emily had taken a step ahead. "I'd rather be with him than live with this shame any longer." Right then, the shadow of the dirty secrets that had hung over the town for years spread out across the square. Because Erik didn't just want revenge or money. He'd buried years of hatred for Emily's mother inside this debt. And David knew it all too well. At that moment, two shadows appeared at the far end of the square. One was a tall, thin man, the other short and stocky. The last members of Erik's old gang. With a single signal, they moved in, trying to grab Emily in the chaos. Just then, David moved like lightning. He hadn't touched a gun in years, but his reflexes were still sharp. With one move, he knocked the knife from the first man's hand and punched the other one. Emily's eyes went wide. She couldn't tell if this was real or just a dream. As David protected her, the rest of the town watched in fear. In that moment, everyone realized the old rules didn't apply anymore. A man was ready to fight the dark side of the town and his own past to save a girl. As things spiraled out of control, Erik suddenly went for his trigger. But just as he was about to shoot, the sheriff stepped between them. "Enough," he yelled. "No one is for sale in this town, and no one will be sacrificed." But Erik wasn't done. He signaled the rest of his gang. A big fight was about to break out in the square. Just then, David pulled Emily behind him and whispered, "We're going to run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Things are about to get even more dangerous." And then a gunshot rang out in the square. Everyone hit the ground. In the dust and chaos, David and Emily took their first steps in the fight to survive. But the real danger hadn't even shown itself yet. While the dust was still hanging in the air, the square turned to chaos for a moment. Gunshots echoed in everyone's ears, and David's calm stood out against the panic of the crowd. Emily, terrified, was holding on to her survival instinct. When David grabbed her by the shoulder and pulled her along, they dashed into a narrow alley. Behind them were shouts, gunshots, Erik's rage, and the heavy judgment of the town. At the end of the street, they hid behind an abandoned barn. David quickly checked the area. His eyes caught a shadow in the doorway, a man with a knife in his hand. Moving on pure instinct, David lunged, grabbed the attacker's wrist, knocked the weapon to the ground, and took him out. Emily watched in shock. Inside this lonely man was a storm of courage. They finally had a moment to catch their breath. As David sat down, trying to steady his breathing, he got a real look at Emily's face for the first time. That face, it was both childlike and marked with the traces of someone who had to grow up too fast. Emily swallowed and spoke. Why? Why are you going this far for us? You don't even know me." David's eyes softened for a moment. "Sometimes your past forces you to keep quiet. But sometimes, someone else's fate breaks that old silence you've been running from. I've made a lot of mistakes too, Emily, just like anyone else. But I couldn't just stand by and watch someone get sold." For the first time, a flicker of trust appeared in Emily's eyes. In that moment, this wasn't just about escape. They were both after something more than survival. Hoping again, trying to rebuild broken trust. But their break didn't last long. Noise from outside the barn startled them both. A few men from Erik's gang were searching the area with dogs and lanterns. David lifted the lid of a closed trunk and whispered, "Get in here." Emily climbed into the dark, cramped trunk, holding her breath. David disappeared into the shadows. When two men entered the barn, one said, "They've got to be around here somewhere." The other lifted his lantern and looked around. Just then, David rushed out from between the shelves, catching them off guard. After a brief struggle, one man was knocked out cold, and the other ran away. But the man who ran off headed straight for Erik, yelling, "I found them. They're here." David quickly got Emily out of her hiding place. "It's not safe here anymore," he said. "We're leaving." They turned down a narrow, bumpy path leading out of town. Behind them, footsteps, barking dogs, and Erik's angry curses echoed into the night. But this time, David wasn't just running to save Emily, he was also running to face the dark secrets in his own past. As Emily struggled to keep up, out of breath, she asked, Who are you really?" David was silent for a moment, then said, I used to be a light of hope for someone else too. But I lost myself. Now, I'm fighting to be a good man in someone's life again. But there was something Emily didn't know. Erik would never stop chasing them. And the shadows moving through the darkness showed that the real danger hadn't even begun yet. As the night went on, they both felt deep down that their escape was just beginning. And in that moment, they knew survival would come at a price, but so would the truth. As the sun rose over the town, whispers echoed through the streets. Everyone had heard Erik's shouting in the square before dawn. Brandt and the girl are here. They're going to pay my debt. Women, children, old men looked out their windows. They all saw that the old fear, this injustice that had been hidden for so long, was finally right out in the open for everyone to see. No one could stay silent anymore. David and Emily had found one last refuge in the old mill outside town. David's arm was bleeding. His eyes were tired but determined. For the first time in her life, Emily was just as determined and free. There was more hope and anger than fear in her eyes. Inside, they spoke in whispers. "Can we really get away from here?" Emily asked. David shook his head. "No, just running isn't enough. We have to end this now. Otherwise, you, me, and this whole town will never be free." For the first time, Emily looked him in the eye and held her head high. "Then I'm with you. I'm not afraid. I'll do whatever it takes." Outside, the sound of hoofbeats echoed. Erik was approaching the mill with 3 townsmen and what was left of his old gang. They had guns in their hands and dark hatred on their faces. Erik's voice was cold and commanding. "Brandt, come out. Give me the girl, and this is over. Otherwise, I'll bring this whole place down on your heads." David turned to Emily and looked into her eyes one last time. "Sometimes, you have to walk through fear for real freedom. I promise you, no matter what happens, I won't leave you alone." They stepped out of the mill. Emily stood behind David, but not hiding. Erik pointed his gun at David. "This debt ends now. Say your last words, Brandt." Some people from the town were watching from a distance. All the things they'd been silent about and ignored for years were now out in the open. One of them, an old man, slowly stepped forward from the crowd. "Enough," he said. "For years we let Erik's injustice go on. It ends now." Another woman shouted, "Don't let that girl be silenced like we were." For the first time, the town started to stand with Brandt and Emily. Erik shouted at them angrily, "No one can stop me. This debt will be paid." David stepped forward, holding his bleeding arm, but his voice was steady. "That debt was paid long ago, Erik. All you ever wanted was revenge, power, fear. But it's over. Neither I nor Emily, nor this town, are afraid of you anymore." At that moment, Erik went for the trigger, but one of the townsmen jumped in, knocking Erik's hand up. The gunshot ripped through the sky, but hit no one. Emily quickly stepped in front of Erik, her face showing courage instead of fear. "Your power was our silence. We're not silent anymore." While Erik was caught off guard for a moment, David came closer to him. "You lived your whole life stepping on others. But today you're alone, because nobody wants you anymore." The townspeople slowly surrounded them, some with sticks in their hands, some with just their bare fists. Erik's men, one by one, put up their hands and backed away. Now Erik was alone. His breath came quick, his eyes darting around wildly. But this time, no one ran, no one was silenced. David dropped his gun to the ground and looked Erik in the eye. "It's over. Now everyone has seen what real justice is. Go, but never come back. There's no fear here, no one for sale here." Erik dropped to his knees, broken, powerless, and alone. For the first time, the town had written its own fate. Emily, with tears in her eyes, hugged David. "We did it. We really did it," she said. David smiled gently. Sometimes a new life starts with just one person saying enough. The day dawned over the town with a new kind of silence. But this silence was no longer about fear, it was about hope and freedom. As Emily and David started a brand new life with the support of the townspeople, no one wanted to go back to the old days. Because sometimes a debt isn't just paid with money, but with courage, conscience, and freedom. And from that day on, no one in that town was ever sold again.